our guests joining here, but also those that are joining us virtually. For those that don't know me, my name is Ricardo Borges de Castro. I'm an Associate Director and Head of the Europe in the World program at the European Policy Center. And it is my distinct pleasure and honor to welcome you to this hybrid conversation on revitalizing EU-Moldova relations. The EPC is delighted to be organizing this event with CMI, the Martti Ahtisaari Peace Foundation. And it's also really nice to be back in a room with a physical audience and with such distinguished guests. For many years, the EPC has followed closely developments in Moldova as well as in the broader region. And today, I must say that I'm very, very honored, and we are very honored to have with us both the Prime Minister of Moldova, Madam Natalia Gavrilița, and the Deputy Prime Minister and Minister of Foreign Affairs, Nicu Popescu. So welcome to this session. I would also like to thank Katarína Mathernová, Deputy Director General for Neighbourhoods and Enlargement negotiations at the European Commission, for joining us for what I'm sure will be a very lively and interesting discussion and conversation. Today's event takes place following 2 days of intense meetings between the Prime Minister, the Deputy Prime Minister, and Minister of Foreign Affairs, and officials from the 3 EU institutions. This visit also included the 6th meeting of the EU-Moldova Association Council. The discussions that took place, which I'm sure that we'll shortly be hearing about them, are also a follow-on from a high-level EU visit to Moldova early this month, a visit of which Dr. Mathernová was also part of. And I'm sure that in the run-up for the December Eastern Partnership Summit, many more such discussions will happen. And it's good that these conversations are happening. I also, this is also the first visit since Moldova's snap July parliamentary elections, which delivered a parliamentary majority to the Party of Action and Solidarity of President Maia Sandu. With Moldova now having a pro-democracy, pro-reform, pro-European leadership and majority in the parliament, there is a huge window of opportunity that has been open to move ahead on important political and economic reforms, not least the judicial reform and other anti-corruption measures, as well as implementation of the country's association agreement and deep and comprehensive free trade agreement. Indeed, your government has a very ambitious program. And I wish, and I'm sure that the Prime Minister will tell us more about her vision and what she wants for Moldova. I would say that the EU is a crucial partner for Moldova. And we believe, and I think all of us in this room believe, that a democratic, a resilient Moldova, first, is good for Moldova, but it's also very good for the EU. And now, before I hand the floor to Roxana Cristescu, who is the head of Eurasian EU Affairs at CMI, at the Martti Ahtisaari Foundation, and also EPC's senior advisor. Roxana will be moderating the conversation with our guests. And this conversation then will be followed by a Q&A with the audience that is here and also at home, which will be led by my colleague, Ionela Ciolan, who's a research fellow at the EPC. She's also a recent doctor. She passed her PhD examinations yesterday, so congratulations to her as well. For those of you turning in online, I would like to ask you to put your questions early, either by writing them in the chat function or by clicking on the hand icon, and my colleagues will give you the floor. Again, I take this opportunity to welcome you and also in advance to apologize because I'll need to leave at 5 to 4. So anyway, on to the discussions. I wish you a fruitful conversation and welcome again, Prime Minister and Minister. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ricardo.
Thank you, Roxana.
It is really a pleasure to cooperate with the EPC, and it's a pleasure to welcome you here today. Just a couple of technicalities before we kickstart. We're going to have first a half an hour where I'm going to be asking you questions, the 3 of you. Then we're going to have a Q&A first coming from the audience in the room, and then another round of questions that is going to be coming from online, from Zoom. And my colleague Ionela is going to facilitate that. I'm just going to reiterate what Ricardo has said. For colleagues that are following from online, please make sure that you ask your question from now, basically. So do not wait until we get to the end of the session. A pleasure to have you here. Madam Prime Minister, can I start with you? The first question that I would have for you would be actually linked to the priorities that your government has. And I was wondering if you could tell us what would be the immediate priorities, let's say 3, the immediate ones, and then perhaps 3 priorities for the next 4 years. Please.
Thank you. Indeed, you know, we have a historic opportunity in Moldova. After many, many years, we have a president, a parliament, and the government who share the same vision about the development of Moldova, who share the same agenda in terms of domestic reforms, in terms of combating corruption, implementing rule of law, increasing the trust of citizens in government, and an agenda that brings Moldova closer to the EU because it implements EU values and it will bring EU standards of life. Interesting that your question actually goes into sort of short-term priorities and medium and long-term priorities, because this is exactly how our government program was structured. So from the very beginning, we announced 4 short-term priorities. First, it's COVID-19 wave, the management of the new wave that is due to the Delta variant. So we have had already several meetings of the National Commission on Public Health. We have revamped the Commission to include 50% of public health experts, and we have changed the framework on how we manage the pandemic. So we've said clearly that incidence of disease will trigger these alerts, and special protection measures will be introduced depending on the alerts in different localities. So unfortunately, the capital and the second largest city in Moldova, Belzi, are now both under red alert. So we introduce measures that are very similar to measures in other European countries where we have a COVID certificate, which includes sort of vaccination, PCR test, or antibody test, and the majority of events can happen only with participation of those who have this certificate. Such symposiums, for example, as this one, have to go online, mostly due to the need to make transportation, so to ease the burden on the transportation system. And also universities now are going online. At the same time, we are coming with a package of support for companies that are affected by these measures. Something that happened all over Europe but didn't happen in Moldova last year was massive support from the state. So just to give you an example, the World Bank survey of enterprises in Europe and Central Asia found that in Moldova, the biggest proportion of companies have been affected. So 88% of companies saw their liquidity drop. At the same time, only 6% received any state aid, both because of the type of aid provided, but also of the mechanisms that were designed to deliver this aid. So to give you a comparison, in Georgia, for example, 81% of the companies were affected, but 51% received state aid. I could give you numbers about the neighboring Romania, Ukraine, but the lack of state aid last year actually reduced the competitiveness of our enterprises, which is something that we're trying to catch up on. So we will introduce furlough schemes to protect jobs, so this technical and partial unemployment, and we are very grateful for the quick disbursement of assistance from the EU. We had the good news today that 36.4 million euros in grant financing was entered the account, or was disbursed today. We also have, we welcome the positive decision to disburse the second tranche of the macro-financial assistance of 50 million euros. And this actually helps us balance the budget for this year and provide this type of urgent support for protecting jobs and protecting the vulnerable. A second priority was raising the well-being of the population. We made some very ambitious promises to our people, and we already in the first month increased minimum pension from 1,100 lei, which is about 55 euros, to 2,000 lei, which is about 100 euros. And this is because the data shows that probability of being poor actually increases with age, and we have a sizable number of the elderly, from especially the children of which migrated, who are sort of, we call it the lonely elderly, who are vulnerable populations. We've also increased some disability payments, payments for veterans, and this also is intended to spike up demand of for small and medium enterprises, especially in the rural areas. So this is sort of, if you wish, both a social and an economic policy. Third on our list was starting the cleanup of the institutions and reforming the justice sector. We have started with the appointment of integral and competent professionals in key positions. We have started reviewing acquisitions. We have started reviewing the corporate governance of state-owned enterprises. Just to give you one example, we reviewed one large acquisition for passports, which was announced just as the Constitutional Court announced early elections. And this acquisition would have put Moldova in a contract for the next 3 years for sort of passport blankets. We discovered significant violations. We're able to stop this procurement, but we also discovered the scheme that saw about 40 million euros siphoned since 2014 from the state coffers, and we sent all the materials to the Prosecutor General. We're hoping for a swift investigation and punishment of those who made poor decisions for the Moldovan public sector. We are also, this is not in the government realm, but my colleagues in Parliament have been adopting legislation to make, to increase the accountability on performance of key regulatory institutions that are subordinated to the Parliament. So, for example, we already had an evaluation of the financial markets regulator, following which the people from the regulator authority were dismissed. And then we started with key legislation on the justice reform. So we adopted changes to the constitution, which changed the rules for the auto-governing body in the judiciary, but also removed the probation period for judges, which is intended to make the judiciary more independent. This has been done following sort of several years of work, even before we came to power, with the Council of Europe and the Venice Commission. We are also working very closely with them on our plans to vet judges and prosecutors. Finally, we wanted to rebuild trust with our partners and ensure that the financial assistance coming to Moldova is relaunched. So, we had very, very good interactions and visits with our neighbors, the Romanian, the Ukrainian government. We had a lot of openness here, and I'm very glad to hear the support that the EU is ready to provide Moldova on its path for reforms. And the Deputy Prime Minister has welcomed many dozens, or several dozens, I think, ministers of foreign affairs in the last 6 weeks, which shows this sort of excitement and enthusiasm about Moldova, which we hope to keep not just for the next 4 years, but beyond. We want to make sort of this European integration path irreversible for Moldova. I know I've already talked too much, so on long term, in 4 years, I want to see better institutions for Moldova, which take decisions based on the public interest and not on private gain. And of course, we want to see some real progress in creating jobs, in investment, and sort of better standards of living for the Moldovan citizens. So this is trust, which means lower corruption, better governance, better rule of law, and then economic prosperity to fit that.
Brilliant. Quite an impressive agenda that you have there. And before I turn over to Deputy Prime Minister, to Nicu, I wanted to ask you another small question, because we're in Brussels and you've had a number of meetings yesterday and today, I believe. And I would ask you, what are your expectations in terms of the support that you are going to get from the EU? And what would you see as the, maybe not immediate and then long term, but what would you say that are the main areas where you would welcome support from the EU?
So I came here with an agenda with several points. You know, we want to improve the level of our dialogue in key areas, in security, in justice, in energy. We are pleading for sort of a more open attitude on the Moldova joining European spaces. So we're talking about mobility, European payments area, roaming, and so on. And of course, we are addressing the assistance for Moldova. It's very important to receive not just more assistance, but in a sense, better assistance. So we have to work together as a team to front load some of the assistance, to think about instruments that are flexible, that are easy to absorb. So, you know, in 3-4 years, so in the medium term, I'm sure that our efforts will help us improve institutions, will lead to better revenues to the budget. It will lead to sort of our better ability for us to manage the policies and the financing and so on. Right now, we have very weak institutions that are corroded by years of corruption and vested interests. So we favor sort of instruments like budget support, you know, new macro financial assistance with a larger component, grant component, to make it more concessional. You know, we want, for example, projects for localities, so going directly into the local authorities based on some, for example, standard projects, which can be easier absorption than some of these big projects. On big projects, we are actually looking on creative ways to quickly improve our capacity and really demonstrate sort of our, you know, the fact that we walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So we're thinking about even outsourcing some of project management, you know, capacities, or, you know, thinking about innovative ways in which we can make sure that we are effective now. People have waited for 30 years, and you know, their expectations are really, really high. And I can tell you that nobody gave us 100 days to judge our actions and our policies, and you know, we are pounded every day with evaluation and judgments on how good, sophisticated, and you know, well communicated our policies are. So yeah, this is our agenda. We have the Association Council at the end of October, so we look forward to sort of working on this as we build towards the Association Council, and then later to the Eastern Partnership Summit. And you know, we hope to come with more and more specific ideas and mechanisms how we could make full benefit of the EU assistance.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Madam Prime Minister. Dear Deputy Prime Minister, dear Nicu, since Madam Prime Minister just mentioned the Eastern Partnership, I would like to turn to you and to ask you, what would be Moldova's foreign policy priorities, and maybe not only in relation to the EU per se, but also in relation to the neighbors. And if you can tell me, I mean, I'm not going to refer to the 100 days, but maybe looking even further on. So let's say, how would you see Moldova in terms of foreign policy in the next 4 years? Where would you like to see it? Both when it comes to EU partnership and also when it comes to the relationships with its neighbors. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Roxana. It's a great pleasure to be here. And you're on a think tank scene. You're only allowed to call me Nicu from now on. Otherwise, if you ask us about our priorities on the Eastern Partnership front, I think our feeling is that for Moldova, the Eastern Partnership has been a success. The deep and comprehensive free trade area has been a success. Moldova benefited most compared to the other Eastern partners when it comes to increased exports to the EU market, including on sensitive goods like agriculture. You know, if you look at the top 5 importers of Moldovan wine, for example, you'd have Romania, Poland, China, Russia, and the Czech Republic. And that's just one piece of statistic, but that tells you how much DCFTA has helped Moldova increase and strengthen its economic resilience in a very difficult region, in a very difficult decade. But it also, of course, has strategic and geopolitical implications in terms of linking Moldova to the European economy. So that has been a success, but at the same time, we're also very aware that the association agreement and the framework and the scope of the Eastern Partnership has been mostly determined more than a decade ago. And since then, a lot of things have happened in terms of EU priorities, regional priorities, and Moldovan priorities. And in this sense, we see in the next phases of our partnership with the EU, what we hope is that we can, and we need to continue implementing the association agreement. And Madam Prime Minister, of course, mentioned, you know, business environment, climate, infrastructure, unbundling, the energy sector. It's all homework that Moldova has not finalized, but at the same time, we need to be boosting the other platforms of interaction in policy areas which are insufficiently covered by the association agreement. And here some of the top 3 priority areas would be, of course, the Green Deal for Moldova and for the EU, and environmental priorities, which were not as acute and as urgent a decade ago as they are now. And here, what I always tell, and if you heard this, I apologize, but you know, roads and institutions and languages might stop at the border, but air doesn't. The air you breathe in the EU is the air we breathe in Moldova, and vice versa. And here we need to work together. And sometimes it's actually cheaper, maybe, and faster to improve the quality of air in Europe by acting also outside Europe's border. And one basic project that we're working on, for example, is reforestation. And actually, if you look at reforestation, it's probably cheaper to do it right next to the EU border than inside. And so there's multiple projects that we're looking at, but that's a clear priority for us. The second one is everything that is related to security, resilience, and defense. Here, the needs have increased dramatically. This region is quite unstable. Moldova is, of course, a neutral state, a state that does not seek to join military alliances, but a neutral state still needs a performing security sector that is able to assure some basic state functionality and is in a situation to be able to protect this neutrality, which is defined by the Moldovan constitution. And here, of course, we're looking forward to deepening our dialogue with the EU, and of course, we've all seen in recent years how much more important this dimension of European integration has become. That's some of the new platforms and new policy domains where we want to develop and deepen our cooperation with the EU. But in doing so, and that's mostly related to software, in doing so, I think it's extremely important for the EU and Moldova to make a big investment into hardware that connects. And here again, Madam Prime Minister mentioned, but one of the numbers which is striking in our region is that some 80, 90 years ago, there were 25 bridges linking Moldova to Romania as the only EU member states we are neighboring. And today there are 9 bridges compared to 25. So there's quite a lot of work to be done just to catch up with the infrastructure interconnectivity from almost a century ago. The main rail bridge connecting Moldova and the EU, meaning Romania, was built and was designed by Gustav Eiffel 142 years ago. We probably need something fresher in terms of infrastructure, something more modern. This bridge can be used, but of course that also tells you how old is the infrastructure that connects us, and we really need to make a big boost in trying to linking Moldova through hardware to the European Union. And of course, similar conversations we have with Katarína on a weekly basis on electricity interconnection. We have a gas pipeline that connects Moldova now to the Romanian and the EU gas market. There's some bottlenecks that we need to eliminate on the EU side, but nonetheless, things are happening. But quite a lot of projects will need to still be delivered. Which brings me to my next point, is the essence of speed. Look at our region 10 years ago, 2011, and look at what happened in our region in the last 10 years. And my point is that we really need to move fast on doing as much as possible in the windows of opportunity we have. In our region, everywhere 10 years is a long period of time, but it would be really useful if we can, while we think about building up this hardware, is that we kind of have a 10 years perspective, but we have to do things now, otherwise things can take even longer than a decade. One other key element is that it's very important for us for the citizens to feel the benefits of interconnection with Europe, to see them and to make them tangible. And here, if I look at the last decade, I would say that, of course, the visa-free regime with the EU has been a major success, which brought and simplified the lives of millions of citizens throughout the Eastern Partnership. Air transport liberalization, again, has driven dramatically air tickets, the tickets for airline travel dramatically down in the last decade. So that's something which is tangible and palpable for the populations. But looking ahead at the next 10 years of Eastern Partnership, it's important to identify similar projects that people will feel immediately the moment when they cross the border. So one of these key projects from our standpoint would be the liberalization of roaming prices. I know that the Balkans came to a deal in June, and the hope in the EU is that the Balkans roaming-free area could be connected to the EU roaming-free area in the next few months, hopefully by the end of this year. And that's a kind of type of calendar that we would love to see in the Eastern Partnership as well. The Eastern Partnership states are going to sign a roaming-free agreement by the end of this year. The plan is to sign it at the summit, and if we can hit the ground running immediately about interconnecting this area with the EU area already from January, February, that would be fantastic, and not wait another 3-4 years for something like that to happen. I'll stop here in case you want to steer me into a different direction.
Yes, I do have a follow-up question actually, and it's linked to, in the think tank community, and especially in Brussels, we do have a lot of conversations about sometimes rigidity of formats or the need to have political dialogues in different forms and shapes. You've mentioned the change that we've had in the region for quite a while now, and the essence of speed. So I'm just wondering, are there any ideas out there in terms of new ways of engaging, new formats of engagement? I'm just thinking, and I know this might be a provocative question, but I'm just thinking the Balkan train, for example. So are there any sort of new formats that you would see in the long term in terms of regional cooperation and cooperation with the EU?
I think conversations about formats are useful. Formats in themselves are useful, but what is even more important is actually to get the job done. So I can give you, if you mentioned the Balkans, after Thessaloniki, the Thessaloniki summit for the Balkans, when the Balkans received an EU accession perspective, all of the countries of the Western Balkans received the so-called Stabilization and Association Agreement / process. And today we see Croatia, which had the same framework agreement. We see Croatia inside the EU, so it made use of this agreement. And we see military tensions elsewhere in the Balkans as we speak. Which is to tell you that the format was the same, but what you do with this format depends on you as a country, as a political class, as a society. So for us, I don't want to kind of get too hyped and hooked on format discussions. I think what matters for Moldova is to deliver on our reform process, to get the job done, to get interconnectors, to get a functioning justice system. And then again, if I look at the Balkans, I think that for a long time, the way the EU has conceptualized its vision for potential future enlargements was to basically promise enlargement to the Balkans and then say that, okay, let's see what happens with the East. Now, if I look at the exact reform performance, at the exact functionality of democratic institutions, of justice systems, of a degree of interconnection with the EU, I don't see two very distinct regions. In the Balkans, there's countries that are doing better and countries that are doing worse. And in the East, we have a similar situation. But I don't think this kind of very rigid sequencing actually works if you adopt a purely meritocratic approach. And in this sense, also my appeal, and if you ask me about my vision in 4 years from now or a bit longer, again, we cannot prejudge what will be the EU debate and conversation regarding future enlargements. But our hope is to position Moldova as a credible partner that would be taken as a serious interlocutor in kind of the next conversation about the contours of a potential enlargement, rather than wait see what happens in a region that is not uniformly applying and implementing the acquis communautaire.
Brilliant. Thank you very much. Thank you. Madam Mathernová, I'm going to turn to you, and I'm going to ask you, you have recently been in Chisinau, I believe it was 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago. So I was wondering if you can share with us some impressions of your visit. And I was also wondering whether you could tell us what would you see as concrete, perhaps follow-up steps after your visit. But I would also ask you, what would you think that would be the challenges in the future when it comes to the Republic of Moldova? Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and it's an honor to be here, Prime Minister, Deputy Prime Minister, friends and colleagues. Indeed, it was 2 weeks ago. The first impression was that the weather is much better than in Brussels. Left rainy Brussels and came to sunny Chisinau. This thing is falling, but okay. Can you hear me?
It's probably important. Do you want to come hear me?
Okay.
It's for the online.
Well,
use my table.
Okay, it's okay now? All right, so that's a big question. So impressions, follow-up, and challenges. Well, the impression was that indeed the sense we got of hope and renewal and excitement about new leadership in Chisinau and in Moldova was very much borne by the atmospherics in town, with lots of, I think, anxiety about the future, because the challenges are indeed big. I'll get to them in a second, but also about the opportunity, the big opportunity that Moldova now has, and that the election of a reform-minded and reform-driven president was not just a mistake in the system, but it was very much borne by by reconfirmation in the parliamentary elections. So that was the first main impression, and second was great to meet with, in fact, the two VIPs you have on the panel, and that I'm honored to share the panel with, about the clarity of vision and clarity of agenda that's ahead of Moldova. Now, what we want to do as a follow-up, I was in Chisinau in June, about a month before the elections, and was announcing there the economic recovery plan for Moldova in the amount of 600 million euros, which we are in fact now in the middle of implementation. We had discussion with a number of ministers. Nicu was there, and I'm happy to say that all the short-term measures along the 5 areas or pillars of the plan have already been implemented, and we are now undertaking the medium longer term implementation on issues such as public finance, SME support, infrastructure, energy efficiency, education, skills, and last but not least, justice reform. We also have published in June, in preparation of the summit of the Eastern Partnership in December, the agenda for the future of Eastern Partnership that has two main areas. One is the governance pillar, one is economic investment plans for the whole region, where we are concentrating on concrete flagship investments in Moldova as well. And so that's something we are going to be working on together with the financial institutions. And this is basically stepping up very quickly the support that we used to provide, and now getting back to it, which brings me to the challenges. When I was in Chisinau, I sort of had the 3 C's in my mind, which is the biggest challenges. One, COVID, because we are far from out of it, and the economic impact of the pandemic is going to be felt for a long time, and it has impact both on the real economy as well as on the public finance, and this is something where we need to, together with Moldovan friends, really invest. The second one is corruption, and I think that the Moldovan authorities are very open about the specter of corruption of the past. Is something that's not going to be easy to deal with right away. It's about reforming the justice sector, but it's not only the justice sector. It's about political life. It's about state-owned enterprises. It's about many areas of activity where one needs to address corruption, preferably before it arises. In other words, closing space for corruption before it occurs by injecting competition, openness, transparency into the economy and the political life. And the third C that is of a major challenge is capacity. And I think the Prime Minister is extremely eloquent in this regard, and in fact, it's not easy to do good public policy in the country where many citizens have an opt-out and can pick up and move somewhere else. And so, I come from a country where there was a huge outward migration, essentially in every generation of the last 120 years, and in Moldova it's even more dramatic, and so it's not easy how to get the best and brightest to help with this renewal of the country, with the great opportunities there are, but the capacity is a real constraint. So one of the things we want to do is continue with our program of high-level advisors, are trying to think about how to embed some advisory capacity, reform capacity into the ministries, similar to what we have in Ukraine, maybe at a different scale, where we have a reform architecture embedding young reformers into the ministries. That's one of the discussions, or whichever way to support, overcome that. And I will finish on the 2 points that Prime Minister spoke about as well, both on the payment. I'm glad it already happened, the payment of the budget support. I'm delighted that you were officially told now about the decision to pay out the second tranche of the macrofinancial assistance, and we are absolutely ready to discuss with you budget support payments, also not payments, programs going forward, because indeed I think with your reform determination we can help you add the additional argument as well as the financial support for it. So this is certainly something we are very much open to. And just one last comment on what Nico was talking about, resilience and security. Even in his think tank role, this was actually something that helped us inside the EU institutions really concentrate on the need to help countries in the Eastern Partnership with resilience, with cyber resilience, with ability to withstand the very specific pressures of disinformation and hybrid threats that the countries face. And so we are tooling up in that area as well, and Moldova will very much be an important partner.
Thank you very much. I would have some other follow-up questions, but I'm afraid I'm not going to be able to, because we do need to give the floor to the audience. So I'm hoping that we can have 2 rounds. If there's any questions from the room, and then we're going to take the floor from the questions from the online.
Okay.
Hello, good afternoon. Sibren de Jong, Analyst Direction East over at NATO SHAPE. My question is for Madam Prime Minister. I would like to ask you if you could elaborate perhaps a little bit more specifically on how you plan to tackle the illicit gains held by Moldovan officials, politicians, law enforcement individuals, and so on, both inside Moldova and abroad. And secondly, based on that, how do you wish to see cooperation with international partners to take hold in this regard? Thank you.
Shall I answer, or are we taking more questions?
I think it's better if we go for the whole room and then we come back to you.
Good afternoon, I'm Tina a researcher from Center for European Policy Studies, where the Prime Minister has spent some time in the past. First of all, let me just really honestly say I'm really impressed to see the increase in enthusiasm, energy, and the level of detail I've heard about already identified tailored policies from the Prime Minister as well as the Prime Minister, also about the mapped sectors for European cooperation with the EU. We talked about homework that Moldova has to do, corruption and institutions, but what I kind of lacked in the already made presentation is saying a few words whether Moldova has some plans for deepening cooperation in the trio format, together with Georgia and Moldova, vis-a-vis whether there are steps here already taken, whether there are some strategies, whether we should expect some ideas already for the upcoming summit. And another question, if you have time, because the Prime Minister has mentioned the Green Deal, indeed this was some missing, let's say, missing, not explored component for the association agreement and the comprehensive trade area. So does Moldova already have a plan how to put forward the cooperation on the Green and Untitled Chapter?
Thank you very much. It's Cristina with the Open Society Foundation from Brussels. Thank you very much for the interesting remarks. My question is also an EU integration one. and also in view of the TRIO initiative that has been launched recently, and also backed very much by civil society in the three countries. A lot has been said already, and a lot has been discussed also over the past few years, how to make the association framework deliver better as a blueprint for reforms. And we as civil society have specifically advocated for a more robust monitoring of the rule of law and justice area. As the Deputy Prime Minister has mentioned, there are actually not such huge differences, for instance, even on that track, when comparing with the enlargement countries. And yet at the same time, for the association countries don't have the same kind of mechanisms in place for benchmarking, monitoring, and support. We talked about, and has been discussed in the think tanks here, the possible application of a rule of law mechanism for the three countries, the EU rule of law mechanism and the court, or the justice dashboard that recently was rolled out to the Western Balkans. So could you say a few words about what you think would be helpful in terms of upgrading that framework to really deliver for Moldova and also within the bloc of three?
I believe that's it.
Yes.
Okay. Madam Prime Minister.
Great question on illicit money flows. It is very unfortunate that 6 years after the banking fraud, which saw 12% of GDP siphoned through state-owned banks, and which saw a bailout that Moldovan citizens are still paying for, it's unfortunate that nobody has been punished and no money have been recovered. And this actually shows how dramatic the problems in the justice area are. Because, in fact, everybody knows who the ultimate beneficiaries are. In fact, there have been investigation reports that provide plenty of evidence for the prosecutor general to move forward with the cases. And we find it very unfortunate that even now, 2 years after Plahotniuc was removed from power and 2 years after the new prosecutor general was appointed, that we see very little progress. And indeed, we have only seen some of the beneficiaries released from prison. And then, we have seen some action against fit and proper investors. We, of course, cannot replace the justice sector. We can only work towards reforming it, but we are aware that this will take years. Our plan is to act through the instruments that we do have as the government. We are making plans to hire international companies to support our legal and investigative capacity to act abroad, and we will follow these assets. Even if we understand that many years have passed, but we think bringing justice to the people, or for people to see that there is some action on justice being made, is very, very important. And here we do count on cooperation of our external partners. While our institutions are weak, there are instruments that could be used in the West. Several years ago, there were non-governmental organizations that have made submissions for the Magnitsky Act, for anti-corruption sanctions. We saw that Mr. Plahotniuc was designated in the United States. We are talking to our partners in the United States, in the UK, but also in the EU and EU member states to use all available instruments to actually sanction these people who have a very strong case against them, and to support our action against them, be it through civil or criminal forfeiture. We are determined to move in this regard, and we are not just dismissing this as something that has passed. Inside the country, it's a bit more difficult because we are seeing no will really from our justice sector to move. And just to understand, there's very little we can do without a prosecutor's sanction. As I said, we're concentrating, I mean, it's only been 6-7 weeks, but we're concentrating on stopping illicit money flows that are happening even now. You know, we have I have a control body under the Prime Minister who has already carried out several investigations. Unfortunately, on some of these, public-private partnerships where the public pays and the private gains, there are such strong legal contracts that I cannot even talk about this in the public, as I am seen as damaging the contract. But we are reviewing some key PPPs and engaging sometimes with companies to see whether we can review. We are looking at privatizations that have been done where the 3-year post-investment period has not passed, and where we can make some action for the public good. But investigating and seizing the assets will actually be practically impossible without the cooperation of the law enforcement bodies. We, again, are grateful to some of our partners who are supporting us access better legal assistance to work on some of these issues. But again, this is a very good example why a functioning judiciary is key. And it's key to stop this sentiment of impunity, which makes others, even now when we have 4 years of a sort of reformist government, even now some people are quite comfortable, and there is a sense of impunity. So we really need to work on making the Prosecutor General's office and the judiciary work for the good of the people. We do believe in cooperating strongly in the associated trio. I had, in the very first weeks of my mandate, a meeting with Prime Minister Šmihal, and we have discussed sort of working together within the EU. We have, a set of complex issues on our bilateral agenda, but we are aligned here on working together with the EU, and I will let Nicu add to our position on the associate trio and this justice therefore.
Thank you. On the trio, actually, there's a lot of activity on that front. I would not worry. There was a lot of written activity last year as the trio was trying to position itself and speak with a common voice in the run-up to the Commission and EAS communication on the future of the Eastern Partnership and the preparation. So there were some joint letters and non-papers that came from the three countries, and to our mind, our voice has been heard. There's also a trio summit in Batumi in July, and then there's a lot of other parallel activities. We had quite good and several contacts at the highest level with Ukraine, between Moldova and Ukraine, but also Moldova and Georgia. So just last week in New York for the UN General Assembly, we both had a dinner with the Georgian Prime Minister and Moldovan President and the Polish President, and then we had a separate meeting with Guam in a Georgian restaurant, by the way. So of course in Guam you also have Azerbaijan, but we also talk about the full spectrum. But at this stage I think that the impulses and the ideas that we gave as three countries, now we need to kind of look in the concrete ways of making them happen. So in our specific case, we just discussed today, we want to launch these high-level dialogues with the EU on energy, on political and security affairs, etc., etc. So the trio, there is a lot of activity. Our positions coincide on a lot of issues. We're speaking with a single voice on these issues that we agree on. The EU is very open to taking this very seriously, but now we're in the phase of looking at the next subsequent steps after the summit to turn these ideas into concrete arrangements. On the Green Deal, well, we in Moldova, we're in a somewhat transitory situation. So several years ago, the Environment Ministry was merged into the Agriculture Ministry. And as you might expect, the incentives that the needs of agriculture and the needs of the environment are not always the same. Sometimes they are, but often they clash. So in this government, we just removed the Environmental Ministry from within the Agriculture Ministry. So we're recreating a new institution, separating budgets, people. So all of it took some time, and around now we're looking at what is exactly our strategy and what's the sequencing and what exactly do we plan to do with the EU, and then there is a reflection process on the EU side. So for now we don't have yet an integrated strategy, but we have already concrete things that are going into that direction. I mentioned reforestation. So we have significant reforestation plans with the support of EU partners, including France, for example. We have water management issues, and here I will mention that there is a conversation between Moldova and Ukraine on the water supply through River Nistru, and there are risks that this water supply might suffer and Moldova might be affected as a result of Ukraine developing a hydropower plant and capacity, hydropower complex upstream. And we are willing to, and basically we need to involve the European Union into these conversations in order to help us get a good sense of what is the likely environmental impact of such issues. And water is a key part of the environment where we live. And even on some adjacent issues like, for example, boosting railroads infrastructure, if it removes, some cars and some trucks from the roads and we can trade more with the EU on railroads rather than roads, that's already also one of the projects that is likely to have a significant, a positive environmental impact. So we're still doing a lot of things without yet having an integrated strategy. But for that, one of the key projects we plan is to build a European gauge railroad to Chisinau so that we can act on that front.
Thank you very much.
May I just add 2 sentences?
Of course.
One is that we are in fact starting a justice dashboard, as was mentioned, inspired by the Western Balkan methodology, with working with the Council of Europe, with the same implementers. So I think that's an important part in reaction to the civil society comment. Although I must say here very clearly that one of the big challenges that Moldova, and not only Moldova, other countries are in a similar situation, face in trying to reform the judiciary is that these judiciaries were made independent many years ago, based on our good advice, before they were reformed. They became independent, and now we are trying to re-reform an institution that is independent and is fighting back. Because people not always with integrity and not always with competence populate this. So that's the big challenge. Albania has been facing it, Ukraine is facing it. It's actually something that's faced by a number of countries inside the EU. So this is something that is going to be tricky. And we will try to do our best to help you as much as we can. And the second point, I just want to make sure I don't not mention it, that there are not many countries in the world that have both the president and prime minister who are like this. So as a woman, I must say that this is something to be proud of in Moldova.
Double responsibility. I think after the Estonian elections, we are now the only country.
Yeah.
It's very unfortunate, but puts a lot of pressure on them.
I wish I could end on this brilliant point, but I've asked permission for 3-4 more minutes, so to be able to take some questions from colleagues that are following us online. So if you don't mind, we're going to take 2-3 questions from the audience online. Please, Ionela.
Thank you very much. So my first question from our audience for Madam Prime Minister is how the government intends to build a stronger institution and stronger institutions in general and to professionalize the Moldovan bureaucracy. And the questions on foreign policy for the Deputy Prime Minister. What is the current plan of the government for the settlement of the Transnistrian conflict, and how the government will approach the fact that Moldova now it's an observer of the Eurasian Economic Union? Thank you very much.
Thank you. So, building institutions is a complex and long-term process. I'm a development specialist and a neo-institutionalist at heart. I know we have to think about distribution of resources, how, the political institutions play into, developing economic institutions and so on. So, this is basically what the whole activity of the government is going to be about. It's basically orienting all decisions and decision-making to be guided by the public purpose. And this is what I want to see in 4 years. I want to see much stronger institution, much better decision-making, much better coordination, and translated into concrete results for the people. In the short term, we're facing, so if we take sort of more narrowly institutions like, thinking about the public administration, we fully intend to do a public administration reform. We will start very soon on designing a strategy. We've already started with the restructuring of the government, but this was sort of a first step. We did it quickly because it was necessary, but we need to do sort of much more profound functional analysis of our sectors, understand, where the people are and what are their tasks and what is their productivity. And we need to resolve the issue of wages in the public sector. We've had a law adopted in 2018 that reformed wages in the public sector and increased the wages for most groups. But there are lots of issues with applying this law. In reality, there are a lot of sort of complaints on how it works, which group is paid better than other. So we intend to sort of look at public wages coupled with productivity and performance. And also we want to look at the financial relation between the central and the local government. So for example, on this wage bill, it actually created quite complex questions in terms of, if the local authority hires public servants that are paid under this unitary wage bill, then, how prepared are they to cover the costs of the rising wages? So we will look sort of at these issues. And of course, in the short term, as I said, we are considering sort of some initial capacity substitution or top-ups that would allow us to attract better professionals. So we are thinking whether something like the reform architecture or something more tailored to Moldovan needs can be introduced. We will be working on all of this, starting with sort of center of government. I'm meeting Sigma soon. 15 years ago, I was a public servant that led some aspects of the public administration reform, and actually it really pains me that in 15 years we have not only not progressed, but even regressed on some of the activities that were implemented back then. So.
Thank you very much, Madam Prime Minister. I'm afraid that I'm not going to be able to allow for this question. I know that we need to stick at the time, correct? What I can promise, and I hope I'm not going to be promising I can promise as myself, and hopefully we can invite the Deputy Prime Minister next time so we can address this issue about in more in depth. We can allow for space. So we're not dismissing the question, but we're going to allow for it with another seminar maybe that is going to be focused on this, if that's okay with you. I know that you have a tough schedule. We don't have time to go in conclusions. I'm just going to mention a couple of keywords that I've heard: clarity of vision, renewal, resilience, hope, trust, connectivity. We did hear also about challenges and things that have to be sort of dealt with. I have the impression that there's a lot of willingness to do so. So I want to thank you very much for joining us today, and I do hope that you will be able to join us again, let's say in a couple of months, with the same enthusiasm and more results to show. So thank you very much, and the best of luck for everything that you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks
Thank
a
you
lot.
very much.